Yes, folks, Hume here again. How will it going? How will it going? So we continue in our series of the election selection, where we're going through different seats, the marginal seats, and we're kind of looking at historical patterns. We're looking at numbers, and we including other non-numerical factors where we can, to get some sense of what we believe or what we think or what appears likely to happen on the day of elections, August 10th, 2020. So in this video, we're talking about the what I would call the Arima Basin. That's 4 seats to deal with: Arima itself, Dabadi-O'Meara, Lupino Bon-Air West, and La Horquetta Talparo. All neighboring seats right next to each other on the east-west corridor. Alright, so what's the forecast for these 4 seats? The forecast, on the face of it, for most people, they would see these seats as leaning towards the PNM, and that is a forecast that I would agree with. So at the outset, I will project those 4 seats as going to the PNM in the elections on August 10th. All right, we will spend a little more time on La Horquetta Talparo a little later, but for now, those 4 seats appear all solidly in the PNM column. All right, so we're gonna go to the graph now and just show you the figures so you get a clear sense of what would have been happening since 2011 in the era of 41 seats. But just before I do that, of course, I'm going to make a little plug for my online platform, People of the Arima Basin. If you or anybody you care about doing the CSEC mathematics exam in January, or the CSEC ADMATS exam in June of 2021, I would advise you very strongly to start the preparation now. Alright, don't wait until September, don't wait until October, don't wait until you register for the January exam to start preparing for the January exam. But we will say a little more about that later at the end of the video. So let me check out the graph now. Alright, so this is the graph as you could see it on the screen here. We're talking Arima, PNM versus non-PNM, 2007 to 2015. Alright, so in 2007, as you can see, this is the figure here: 63.9% for the PNM, 34.8% for the non-PNM. In 2010, when we had that massive anti-PNM wave, the PNM would have lost with a percentage of 47.9% compared to 51.6% for the non-PNM factors. That is the classic definition of a close or a close-ish election. Excuse? And then, of course, in 2015, we returned to what we would normally expect in Arima, where the PNM had a percentage of 69.3% and the non-PNM factors had a percentage of 30.7%. All right? My figure projections using the trend line for 2020 would show a percentage of 65.7% for the PNM and a percentage of 35%. Not making any sense there, but okay. Forget that. Maybe let me leave it as 34 for now. 34% for the non-PNM coalition. All right. So in other words, basically, barring slight numerical anomalies in the calculation, we see we expecting a drop in the PNM percentage, and we're expecting a slight rise in the non-PNM percentage, which is consistent with what usually happens when you have an incumbent in office, and you might have some slight pockets of disaffection, but generally a gap this wide in a seat like Arima would be almost impossible to close, barring a massive anti-PNM sentiment, as was the case here in 2010 and as was the case in 1986. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, those are the only 2 times in which the PNM would have lost the Arima seat in a general election. So we go on now to Dabadi-O'Meara. Same kind of graph, similar to the PNM situation. In 2007, we had 58.8% for the PNM. We had 40.6% for the non-PNM. In 2010, again, the massive anti-PNM sentiment, the PNM vote went down to 46.1%, and the non-PNM vote went to 53.5%. 2015, back to regular order, you might say, back up to 66.3% for the PNM and 32% for the non-PNM factors. So my figure projections show in 2020, based on my calculations, we're expecting a percentage of 64.6% for the PNM and a percentage of 33.4% for the non-PNM. This is pretty straightforward. This more or less follows the same pattern as Arima. So we go in again. From W. we go to Lopino Bon Air West. Similar kind of pattern here. In 2007, 54.4 for the PNM, 45.0 for the non-PNM. 2010, same story. PNM would have lost there. The PNM went down to 47.0%. The non-PNM went up to 52.7%. And in 2015, the PNM went back up to 63% and the non-PNM went down to 34.1%. So again, not too much to talk about or discuss in a graph like this. This again pretty much follows the same line as Arima and WMERA, and probably perhaps no, it's more or less along the same line. So the projections for 2020 show a PNM percentage of 63.3% and a non-PNM percentage of 33%. Now we save the one that everybody talking about for last, La Horquetta Talparo. Now as you can see immediately, the shape of the graph for La Horquetta Talparo is different to the shape for the other three. Let me just go back and see. Let me see, hold on. Arima, watch this. Right, you have the cross here, which is where the non-PNM would have been on top of the PNM. And then you have the X looking there. You could see the lines actually going, diverging away from each other. So even though you had this little event here, where the non-PNM would have surpassed the PNM, the overall trend over the three elections is for the PNM to increase, while the non-PNM voters seem to be decreasing. Same story in WMERA, same pattern again. Watch it. Same thing in Lopino Bon Air West. Right? You start and the two lines diverge as we go out. However, in La Horquetta Talparo, the two trend lines seem to be almost parallel. Right? You look at it with the naked eye and it appears very, very parallel. Alright? Of course, it's not exactly parallel, which you will be able to figure out by looking at the two equations here, but we will leave that alone for now. There's a little more in depth into the maths. But you're looking at that and you could see, you could sense that the two lines parallel, which suggests that the trend is different for La Horquetta Talparo as opposed to the other three seats. And this is probably, this is a reflection of a lot of the sentiment that has been taking place, where we have a lot of people who would be saying that La Horquetta Talparo would go to the UNC, etc., etc., etc. In these first videos, we don't want to discuss too much the candidates and the campaigns and all that. We will do that another time. This, we're just looking at the numbers, all right? So you look at this and you immediately see a difference between this and the other graphs, all right? Now, my projections for La Horquetta Talparo in 2020 say that the PNM would win with a percentage of 54% and the non-PNM would have 46%. So in other words, let me just recap the statistics coming down. So in 2007, the PNM would have had 57.1%, the UNC would have had 41.3%. So sorry, not the UNC, the non-PNM. Right, I've been very clear on that. In 2010, the PNM would have gone down to 46.3% and the non-PNM would have gone up to 52.9%. In 2015, the PNM would have gone back up to 57.5% and the non-PNM would have gone back down to 41.9%. Alright? As you can see, of all the four seats in what I refer to as the Arima Basin, this is the seat that the non-PNM, well in this case the UNC, probably has the best chance of winning if we just look at the numbers. Alright? And if the PNM wins this seat, this seat will probably be the one that they would win by the closest margin out of the 4 we discussed today. All right, so again, just to recap, my projections based on this simple trend line here suggest that the P&M can win with 54%, which again is a drop from 57.5% in 2015. And it would suggest that the non-P&M would go up to 46%, which would be a big jump from 41.9% in 2015. So again, in this case, as opposed to the other 3 graphs, where the P&M line was going up and the non-P&M line was going down, in this case, even though the lines appear parallel at a first glance, what is actually happening here is that the P&M line seems to be going down and the non-P&M line seems to be going up. And that is an average development over the course of 3 election cycles up to now. So basically, in this particular seat, we're expecting an increase in the non-P&M vote, but it may not be enough to overturn this gap here in 2015. The gap might close, but it won't be overturned. So the mathematics of the figures over the past 3 elections seem to be pretty much in line with a lot of the non-mathematical buzz that surrounds this particular seat, Lahoketa-Talparo. So we're going to go now back to the whiteboard for some closing comments on these videos. Right, so you see what happens when we do the maths literally, right? And you're seeing that the mathematics in terms of the numerical calculations and in terms of the graphical expression of those calculations are pretty much lining up with the buzz on the ground. Now, that doesn't always happen. There are times when there's a particular buzz, and then when you dig into the numbers, you realize, well, hey, it has something else going on here. All right? So it's not necessarily that we are being a slave to the numbers, but we have to consider the numbers in the grand scheme of things, in addition to all the other non-numerical aspects, where the non-numerical aspects that go into producing a final voter count on the election night. All right? So you see what happening in Lahoketa-Talparo. We will get a little deeper into that discussion at a later date, right, when we will probably discuss candidates and strategies and all that. That's a separate discussion. That is when we step out of the mathematical circle now. But for now, we're seeing, even from a purely mathematical perspective. In other words, if you were looking at these graphs with absolutely zero knowledge of all the other buzz, in other words, let me say somebody come from a different country. Let me be facetious and say a different planet, just for the sake of what's the word I'm looking for? I forget the word I'm looking for, but anyway, just for the sake of being extreme, let us say somebody come from another planet and they were looking at those 4 graphs. Even without any knowledge at all of the buzz, they're not aware of the news, they're not aware of the persons, the people, the personalities involved. You could tell that something different about Lahoketa-Talparo as opposed to the other 3 seats in the Arima Basin. And that is something that I am sure the respective political parties will be paying attention to. So basically, common sense would suggest that the P&M would be very, very, there would be a different level of urgency where we're talking about Lahoketa-Talparo. Not to suggest that they're not urgent about the other 3 seats, but Lahoketa-Talparo is a different kettle of fish. And also on the UNC side, we would expect that they'll be making a harder push. They're pushing real hard for Lahoketa-Talparo, right? Not that they're not making an effort in the other 3 constituencies, but you look at the graphs and you realize, we have a good chance in Lahoketa-Talparo. Let we go here. All right? And you will get that feel on the ground as the days go by leading up to the election. All right? So that's basically it. We're calling those 4 seats in the Arima Basin for the P&M at this point in time. However, we're watching Lahoketa-Talparo with a cocky eye, because if anything special happens there, what we might find is that the PNM might lose. Sorry, let me put it in the order I want to put it, because of how the figures come down. If anything special happens in Lohoketa Paro, right? If there's something on the ground happen, you might find one, and the PNM would lose with a much smaller, the PNM would win, the PNM would win with a much smaller majority than the figures suggest. Or, on the flip side, you might find that UNC might win Lohoketa Paro with a very, very, very slim majority. Alright? So those are the possibilities. One, the figures could play true to form and PNM will win by about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% maybe. Or the UNC might put up a strong showing and the PNM might win by 2 or 3%. Or we stretch a little further and UNC now might win by 1% or 2%. That is pretty much what we're looking at where Lohoketa Paro is concerned. Alright? But as I say, we'll deal with that at a later date. So as I close out the video now, I want to say a little more again about my online mathematics platform. Basically what it is, again, for you people in the Arima Basin, if you or anybody you care about is doing the maths exam in January. Alright? Form 4 going into Form 5. Private student doing over the exam at whatever amount of times you're doing it over. The second time, the third time, whatever. Fourth time, whatever. It really doesn't matter. First time even. Or, and this is a group that I really want to give some level of special mention to. The Form 5s who doing the exam now, who doing the exam in this particular format that CXC bringing up. Right? A format where you might find yourself in a position at some point where the quality and the integrity and the authenticity of your grades could be challenged. So we don't want that. We don't want at some point somebody to be challenging your grades. Right? You get a 1 in this exam in July 2020 and somebody see it and immediately you see an asterisk over the head. Alright? And it's how to challenge it. No. And that is why I am making a strong appeal to parents. Right? Yes, I know it's a little stressful. Yes, I know it's a little more, a little extra, but it's better to take the stress now. Let your child do the exam over in January 2021. Or maybe June if you so choose. Alright? And in doing so, you start the preparation as early as possible. However you want to do it is up to you. But if you think that you want to come by me to do something, you can start as early as now. We just finished trigonometry this week. We did Pythagoras theorem the previous week, and we're moving on to some other things. Alright, the course is straightforward, $500 for the rest of the year. And of course, for those who doing AdMaths, stay close, we have something coming up for you as well. So that's it basically for now. Stay tuned to the elections at Hume on Facebook. We have plenty more coming your way.